Hello, welcome to SNAB Demola, and today's lesson we're talking about cystic fibrosis. Very important condition for A-level biology. We're going to talk about its effects on the respiratory, the digestive, and the reproductive system. So no time to waste. Let's get it. Okay, so first we're going to explore what mutations are, and literally perfect definition, mutation is a change in the base sequence of DNA. Say that in your exam, they'll love you. Cool. What causes a mutation is a very important question. And to be honest, typically in your exam, you are looking at this one about an error in DNA replication. But other reasons, radiation, smoking, yada yada. Cool. Didn't want to focus too much on that because that's kind of lower yield, except maybe the definition of a mutation. But then when we think about types, this is a bit more important. We have deletion, addition, substitution mutations. These are your main three. Yeah. Deletion, you remove a base. Addition, put in a base. Substitution, you replace a base. And all of this works to change your codons. Yeah. And that could, for example, change amino acid. It also could not if it's degenerate. Now, other types of mutations to just be aware of: inversion, duplication. These are more like, so for example, duplication, you take a part of a gene and then you copy it. Yeah, so take a part of a gene, it gets copied, exact same thing gets put into the same chromosome. Yeah, cool. Inversion as well. So you have a sequence of your DNA inside of your gene and then it gets flipped. Yeah, it gets flipped when it replicates. That's another type of mutation. Just be aware of those. Main thing that we need to concern is a frame shift. So frame shift is a very, very dangerous type of mutation. And what it is that you've changed one codon, and that's affecting all of your codons following that. Yeah. So say for example, I've got AUCGA C or something like that. Say if I put in a codon here, so I put in a base, sorry, here. Say I put in a G here. Not only has that changed this codon, right? Because before it was GAC, now it's GGA. Every single codon following it's going to change as well. That is a frame shift. And that really will change the position of the stop codon, which means that we're probably going to get a very different functioning protein. And I just actually noticed well that despite what I've just said, most of the mutations are going to be benign. So they don't really have a positive or negative effect. We call them like silent mutations, so they don't really change anything. However, some of them do have positive manifestations. Think like natural selection, a bacteria that develops antibiotic resistance, fantastic, right? But then also be aware that a lot of them negative as well, but most are benign. So now comes on to the main thing that we wanted to learn today, cystic fibrosis, yeah? A genetic disorder, cool. A mutation that results in a non-functional or a protein with an altered functioning being formed, and that will mean that there's changes in phenotype, right? If I have a mutation in cystic fibrosis, it is specifically, we'll get to it, but it means that the protein formed is not going to work as well, or it's not going to be formed. And there are so many different cystic fibrosis mutations, don't really need to worry about them all in terms of your A-level. Cool. What we do need to know, autosomal recessive condition, yeah? And it affects the CFTR gene on chromosome 7. Let's define CFTR. Could be a 1 marker. Cystic fibrosis transmembrane conductance regulator. And I think the bit that catches people out is that this part, conductance, isn't part of the name. A bit confusing, but just accept it. And knowing chromosome 7 is really important as well. Can be a multiple choice question. What we are really interested in is that as a chloride ion channel. Yeah? Let's talk about what normally happens with CFTR, right? So say we're in an airway, we've got some mucus, right? I've got my chloride ions going through CFTR. Let's think about what's going to happen next, right? I'm having negative ions coming into this mucus. I need to balance it, don't I? I need to balance it. So sodium's going to follow. So chloride goes, sodium follows to balance out the charge. Yeah, we don't want to create an electrochemical gradient. Now, water. Yeah, think about it. If I've got salts or solutes here, I need water, or else my water potential is going to be too high. Yeah, water potential is going to be too high. So, or too low, sorry. So we're going to put water there. Yeah, too concentrated, we need water to balance it out. Moves by osmosis into the mucus. We get this normal consistency. What's actually happening with cystic fibrosis is that the CFTR, it's either not working or it's not there. Right? And that means that chloride isn't going to pass through. If my chloride isn't going to pass through, sodium's not going to go, because why would it? It doesn't need to balance any charges there, which means water isn't going to go. And that means that we're going to form this really thick, sticky mucus that can get trapped. What we really concern about, especially in airways, is that your cilia, right, they can't waft that mucus up towards the throat so that it can be swallowed and digested, right? That mucus is just going to stay in the airway, and that's going to cause a lot of complications, which we're going to talk about next. So I will say, I think I cooked with this diagram, but you can see here, CF, let's talk about first the respiratory system, yeah? Look at my airway here. This is either going to be my bronchi or my bronchioles, yeah? Oxygen's trying to come in towards the lungs, carbon dioxide's trying to go out, yeah? But we've got this massive mucus plug, right, in our airway. That means here, well, my carbon dioxide isn't going to go, my oxygen isn't going to go. This movement can't happen because that mucus plug is so big, right? And that means that we are not going to have efficient gaseous exchange. Yeah, we will not have efficient gaseous exchange because oxygen and carbon dioxide are struggling to get in and out of the airway, right? So, like we said, bronchobronchioles impairs gaseous exchange. That's going to cause us difficulty of breathing, and you normally hear it described as a wheeze. Don't need to worry too much, but mostly difficult breathing. Another one I like to mention is the risk of infection. If I've got an offensive microbe in here, it's going to get trapped. Yeah, it's just going to stay here. We won't get to the lungs where we're going to have specific macrophages. Yeah, it's just going to stay there, and this is going to be a great environment for it to grow. Great environment for it to grow. So that is why if we get all this bacteria stuck here, they colonize, they create infection. Not great. Yeah. Respiratory symptoms of cystic fibrosis normally treated with some antibiotics, get rid of infection, and also percussion therapy. So this is like maybe like a pat on the back, yeah, maybe like a pat on the back to kind of clear that mucus. So that is what we're mainly going to do to treat cystic fibrosis and respiratory symptoms. Digestive system. I tried. So I tried to draw a pancreas and the duodenum. Now, mucus can get stuck in this pancreatic duct. No bueno. Yeah. If they get stuck in the pancreatic duct, that means that our pancreatic enzymes will not be able to get into the duodenum, right? If they can't get into the duodenum, we cannot break down all these macronutrients that we take in our diet. So like your fats, your proteins, your carbohydrates, yeah, won't break them down as efficiently. If we aren't getting our nutrients, malnutrition, growth delays. Yeah, very, very important to know. And what we treat it is pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy. I think the acronym is PAT, so pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy, which I didn't write here. Don't worry about it. But yeah, those are your digestive system symptoms. Reproductive system, I struggled a bit more with just drawing, but those are meant to be your uterus and the ovaries and your fallopian tubes mainly. So the mucus is stuck in that fallopian tube, yeah? Can also be stuck in the sperm ducts. And what it is that if it's stuck in the fallopian tube sperm duct, that means the sperm, the egg, they are not getting into that uterine cavity as easily, which means that we're not going to have adequate fertilization. Makes it very, very much more difficult for these people to get pregnant. Yeah? Just be aware, very important manifestations of cystic fibrosis. Unfortunately, no treatment. So there's no definitive treatment that is going to stop the symptoms of cystic fibrosis, but these ones that I've mentioned can help to manage it. Here we got a nice and short video today, but we have got questions to answer. So the first one's a 6-marker. You've got a list of symptoms listed here. We need to know why the person with cystic fibrosis will have it. Why is cystic fibrosis affecting breathing? Please explain that to me. And then also here, what is the role of the CFTR in ensuring that mucus produced in the lungs has the right consistency? So I'm going to zoom out. Hopefully you can see all 3 questions. Have a go. Okay, and here are your answers. So, cystic fibrosis, we always need to mention the primary thing. The primary thing about this disease is that the mucus is thicker. Yeah? Then let's go system by system. Like we said, pancreatic enzymes can't enter the intestine. I mainly mentioned the duodenum, right? But the intestine can't enter the intestine. Yeah? You need a high energy diet because digestion is less efficient. Or you could use pancreatic enzymes because that will help you to digest better. Either or would probably be accepted in the exam. Yeah. This is a bit of a similar point as well. Cysts forming in the pancreas might be nice to mention, just so you know. Cool. Sperm can't leave the testes. Yeah, this is a man, right? Sperm isn't leaving the testes. We're gonna have less chance of fertilization. And then the gene mutation, non-functioning CFTR, and this is a bit of explanation about what's going on. I think it's always nice to chuck in, especially when you had a 6-marker. I would just chuck in cystic fibrosis. We're talking about mucus. Why does it happen? Explain that. That's a bit at the end. And then the symptoms that they talked about with him was about the high energy diets and then also about releasing sperm. So just mention those 2. Didn't need to mention anything respiratory. Now here, this question, again, we were really just talking about what does cystic fibrosis do? Yeah, thick mucus always going to get you a mark when you talk cystic fibrosis, right? We were saying that the cilia can't move it, so that means that your bronchioles, they become constricted, right? They don't let as much air go through, and that is going to mean that we have less gaseous exchange in your alveoli. Always remember where it's happening. The alveoli, very specific to mention. Yeah. And then finally, we just wanted a bit about the physiology about the CFTR protein. So like we said, it's a chloride ion channel. What does it do? Let's chloride out. Sodium was going to follow the chloride, yeah? Balance out the charge. And then if we've increased the sodium concentration, water then has to move out so that we do not have an unstable water potential gradient, yeah? Hope that all makes sense in terms of answering the question. Okay, and we're wrapping up now, so it's time for the A-star tips. What is good to do? Explain the different types of mutation. Yeah, in an exam, if I can say addition is this, deletion is this, substitution is this, fantastic. Yeah, addition might be called insertion as well. Just remember that. Now, explaining mutation, guys. That definition so easy to mark. So easy to mark to just say changing the basics of DNA. Yeah, and then changes, and then maybe changes in the polypeptide. Yeah, say all of that, you're gonna get marks. Cool. Informed about cystic fibrosis. I would say actually maybe I've kind of got a bit confused with the medical school part of this. I would argue that this part isn't as important, but just know about cystic fibrosis. Yeah, know what kind of things you expect with the disease. Very important, and that kind of links to our last point that I had here about the systemic consequences. Yeah, and being able to explain that whole thing about the chloride ions, the sodium, the water through the CFTR. Very high yield. Yeah, cool. What do we not want to do, guys? Just make sure that you've done your revision, because if you've done your revision, you should know what cystic fibrosis is. Yeah, you don't want to get into the exam, there are cystic fibrosis, and you're like, what the hell is that? Yeah, make sure that doesn't happen to you. Underlying physiology, also very easy to miss out. Yeah, you could know everything about cystic fibrosis, what it causes, about excess mucus. If I can't explain that thing, this is in the A-level biology. If I can't explain to you why cystic fibrosis causes the problems it does, then I haven't done enough job in my revision. And then finally, as well, the treatments management of cystic fibrosis, very easy to kind of neglect, but also extremely important. If you think there's a wonder drug that's cured cystic fibrosis, which, as to the knowledge of your A level, there isn't, then you don't want to say that in exam. Yeah, make sure that you do know about what treatment, what management we can offer to someone with cystic fibrosis. Very, very important. I hope that video has been quite helpful. It's a bit late at night, so I've kind of rushed it. But if you have any questions at all about anything I said, drop them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer. Also, like the video if you found it helpful. Please, really, really is a big encouragement for me. We've also got the TikTok and the Instagram, both at A-Star Demola. But that's kind of it for now. So hopefully it's been helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.